Have you ever noticed that the more deeply you think, the more disconnected you start to feel from the world around you? That the clearer you see things, the less people want to listen? You're not imagining it. Society has always had an uneasy relationship with deep thinkers, not because they're wrong, but because they shine a light on things most people would rather keep in the dark. Just look at history. Socrates, Galileo, Tesla, brilliant minds who were silenced, ridiculed, or ignored. Not because they lacked intelligence, but because they made people uncomfortable. They saw the world as it really was, not as people wanted it to be. Take Schopenhauer, for example. He was one of the most brutally honest philosophers to ever live, and he believed intelligence wasn't a blessing, it was a burden. To him, the smarter you were, the more isolated you became. But why is that? Why does society push away those who think differently? The answer is hidden deep in our psychology. Let's say you're standing next to someone really strong. You might admire their physique, maybe even feel inspired. If you meet someone wealthy, sure, you might feel a bit jealous, but not attacked. But now imagine being around someone who's clearly more intelligent than you. Suddenly, it's not just admiration, it's discomfort. This is what psychologists call the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just share ideas, they reflect back other people's limitations. And that reflection can feel like a personal insult, even when the thinker says nothing at all. It's not arrogance, it's presence. Unlike wealth or beauty, intelligence strikes at the core of who we are. We define ourselves by what we believe and how we understand the world. So when someone comes along and sees through all of that, when they ask questions no one else dares to, it can feel like they're tearing down your identity, not just your ideas. This is exactly why deep thinkers have often been pushed aside, not because their ideas weren't valuable, but because they made people feel exposed. And humans, by nature, will go to great lengths to avoid that kind of discomfort. Think back. Have you ever tried bringing up something deep in a casual conversation? Maybe you mentioned a philosophical insight or asked a question that challenged someone's worldview. And what happened? Blank stares, nervous laughter, a quick subject change. That wasn't random. That was self-defense. Most people avoid depth because it threatens their carefully constructed view of the world. They're not looking to be challenged. They're looking to be comfortable. And unfortunately, intelligence rarely offers comfort. In fact, studies show that in social situations, people value confidence more than intelligence. That's right. Being sure of yourself, even when you're wrong, often gets more respect than thinking critically. That's why smooth-talking influencers and charismatic leaders gain massive followings, while thoughtful, nuanced voices go unheard. It's not that deep thinkers are less capable of connecting. It's that their very nature pulls them away from the crowd. They see the cracks in society. They question the norms. And most people? They don't want the world questioned. They want it confirmed. This is what makes the life of a deep thinker feel lonely. Because the more truth you uncover, the more disconnected you become from the world that thrives on illusion. And this isn't just a social problem, it's a neurological one. Modern neuroscience reveals something fascinating. When people feel intellectually inferior, their brain's amygdala, yes, the same area that lights up in moments of fear, goes into overdrive. In simple terms, deep thinkers don't just make people uncomfortable, they can actually trigger a primal fear response. Why would intelligence trigger fear? The answer lies in evolution. For most of human history, survival depended on belonging to a tribe. Getting kicked out could mean death. So our brains are wired to favor social acceptance over intellectual depth. Someone who questions the tribe? That's a threat, not just to ideas, but to the safety of the group. That's why deep thinkers tend to stand out, and not in a good way. Their intelligence threatens the fragile balance of social dynamics. People don't just worry about being wrong, they worry about being seen as wrong, especially in groups. A 21 study from Stanford found that people actually feel less threatened by intellectuals in one-on-one settings. But in groups, the fear spikes. That's because group status becomes the focus. No one wants to be outshined. So instead of listening, people try to discredit or exclude the deep thinker to protect their social standing. That's why you'll often find the best conversations happening privately, not in a crowd. Because in private, the ego takes a break. In public, it goes on defense. Psychologists have identified a few cognitive biases that help explain this. There's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with the least knowledge are the most confident, and those with real expertise tend to doubt themselves. That's a recipe for conflict. The less someone knows, the more they think they know, and they're often the first to shut down a deep thinker, not because they understand, but because they don't. Then there's status quo bias. Most people are hardwired to prefer the familiar. New ideas, complicated truths, that's cognitive effort. And effort feels like risk. And of course there's the backfire effect. When confronted with facts that contradict their beliefs, people don't change their minds, they double down. So when a deep thinker speaks up, they're not met with curiosity. They're met with resistance. And in today's digital world, this dynamic is even worse. Social media doesn't reward insight. It rewards engagement. And engagement comes from controversy, not complexity. Viral content is designed to spark emotions, anger, joy, outrage, not deep thought. So who wins? The loudest, not the wisest. Simple, catchy sound bites dominate. Nuanced, thoughtful perspectives get buried. Deep thinkers struggle in a world where every idea has to fit in a 15-second clip. This isn't just frustrating, it's dangerous. Because when society rewards entertainment over enlightenment, truth gets lost, and thinkers who value truth become outcasts. So where does that leave deep thinkers? Well, the rejection they face isn't just social, it's biological, psychological, and cultural. It's baked into the way humans function, reinforced by group behavior, and amplified by technology. But this doesn't mean deep thinkers should be silent. It means they need to understand the forces they're up against. It also means they need to ask themselves, if society fears intelligence, what does it actually embrace? The answer: comfort. So, if you're someone who's ever found it hard to fit in because your thoughts run deeper than the conversations around you, know this: you're not imagining it. And more importantly, you're not alone. Let's talk about why society really resists deep thinkers. At the core of it, it's about how human beings are wired, psychologically, emotionally, even biologically. For thousands of years, our survival as a species didn't depend on being the smartest person in the room. It depended on being accepted by the group. That's right, fitting in was more important than standing out. In tribal times, going against the group meant being cast out. And back then, isolation wasn't just lonely, it was deadly. So, over generations, our brains evolved to crave group approval, harmony, and social cohesion. Being accepted by the tribe meant safety. Disrupting the tribe, even with good ideas, meant danger. That instinct is still with us. It's why today, when someone brings a radically different perspective into a group setting, people get uncomfortable. And they don't just disagree. They can react with hostility, even fear. It's not necessarily about the idea being right or wrong. It's about how it threatens the social fabric. That's the subconscious logic at play. Now, modern science backs this up. Neuroscientists have found that when someone feels intellectually outmatched or challenged, the amygdala, the part of the brain that controls fear and survival responses, lights up. It's the same region that gets triggered when we're facing a physical threat. So yes, someone asking challenging questions in a meeting or suggesting a better way of thinking about a problem, that can actually trigger a fight or flight response in others. It's wild, but it's real, and this explains so much of what deep thinkers experience. You walk into a room, you ask the kind of question that challenges the group norm, and suddenly you're met with awkward silence, changed subjects, or worse, dismissal. It's not about you being rude or arrogant, it's that you unintentionally activated their defense system. Now, there's also a phenomenon called the mirror effect. Basically, when people are around someone more intellectually developed, it doesn't just introduce new ideas, it reflects their own limitations. And that's hard to look at. We all like to think we're intelligent, right? It's part of how we see ourselves. But when someone comes along who operates on a deeper intellectual level, it can feel like a personal threat, even if the deep thinker says nothing condescending or judgmental. Their very presence creates discomfort, not because they're wrong, but because they shine a light on what others haven't thought about yet, and people don't always appreciate that light. This is why intelligent people often feel alienated. They're not intentionally trying to be outcasts, but society on some level pushes them away. It's not personal, it's tribal. It's about protecting ego, group harmony, and the illusion of certainty. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. According to a Stanford University study in 2021, deep thinkers are actually received differently depending on the context. One-on-one conversations, people are more open. They feel less threatened. But in group settings, the resistance skyrockets. Why? Because social comparison kicks in. In a group, everyone is subconsciously evaluating status. Who's smarter? Who's more liked? Who's leading the discussion? If someone begins to dominate the room with complex, thought-provoking insights, others may feel like they're being overshadowed. And again, instead of leaning in, the instinct is to push back, minimize, or exclude. So if you've ever found that your most meaningful conversations happen privately, behind closed doors, while group settings leave you drained or ignored, this is why. It's not a lack of social skill, it's the social dynamics of group psychology. There are even cognitive biases that reinforce this pattern, like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with low ability tend to overestimate themselves, while those who are truly skilled often underestimate their knowledge. This creates a huge disconnect, because the people most confident in their opinions are not always the most informed, and deep thinkers who are aware of how much they don't know often speak with caution and nuance, which, sadly, can come off as uncertainty in a world that values boldness over depth. Then there's the status quo bias, where people prefer familiar ideas to new, complex ones. It's more comfortable to believe what we already know, even if it's wrong. And the backfire effect, where people actually double down on their beliefs when confronted with evidence that contradicts them. All of this creates a tough environment for deep thinkers. You're not just up against different opinions, you're up against how the brain protects itself. And let's not forget the role of social media in amplifying all of this. In the digital world, speed and simplicity win. Algorithms reward engagement, not depth. So content that's emotional, controversial, or instantly gratifying spreads much faster than anything that takes time to unpack. A 10-second meme will always outperform a 10-minute explanation. A punchy headline gets more clicks than a nuanced breakdown. So what does that mean for intellectuals, philosophers, and big thinkers? It means they're swimming upstream. The more thoughtful and well-reasoned their ideas, the harder it is to go viral. It's not that their ideas aren't good, it's that they require attention, time, and thought. And let's be honest, those things are in short supply. This rejection of depth doesn't just happen online. It starts earlier, in the very systems that shape our thinking. Let's look at schools. They often say they value intelligence, but in reality, most reward obedience. Memorize the textbook. Pass the test. Don't ask too many questions. Don't challenge the teacher. Students who think critically, who want to dig deeper, who ask why instead of just what, they often get labeled as disruptive. Then in workplaces, it's the same story. Innovation is praised in theory, but in practice, companies often reward those who maintain the status quo, those who fit in, follow procedure, play the office politics game. Real creativity, deep thinking, and questioning authority, those things are often seen as threats, not assets. Even in politics, we see this. The leaders who speak truthfully, even if it's unpopular, usually lose to those who say what people want to hear. Emotion beats logic, simplicity beats complexity, and this shapes society at large. The sad irony is that some of the most celebrated minds in history were completely ignored, criticized, or ostracized during their lifetimes. Galileo was imprisoned. Van Gogh died in poverty. Tesla changed the world but died alone and broke. Society often resists intelligence when it challenges the norm. Only once the ideas become safe, once they're widely accepted, do we celebrate the people who brought them to light. But by then, those minds are usually long gone. That's the harsh reality for deep thinkers. They're not rejected because they're wrong, but because they're ahead of their time. So, where does that leave us? What can you do if you're one of these people, someone who thinks deeply, sees patterns others miss, questions things others accept blindly? The first thing is this: don't dim your light just because others can't handle the brightness. The world doesn't need fewer thinkers. It needs more of them, but with wisdom, strategy, and patience. It's tempting to isolate, to give up, to believe that if society doesn't understand you, you should walk away from it altogether. But that would be a loss, for you and for everyone else, because history shows us something powerful. While society resists intelligent minds at first, it eventually needs them. That means your responsibility as a deep thinker is twofold: to protect your mind and to learn how to share it effectively. Let's start with protection. This means choosing your environment carefully. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. Not every room is meant for your insight. You wouldn't play a symphony in a room full of people screaming over each other, and you shouldn't drop a truth bomb into a space that hasn't earned your trust. You need spaces that nourish you intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. Whether it's a small circle of friends who challenge and support you, or solitary walks with books and audiobooks that feed your curiosity. Protect your energy. Not everything needs to be debated. Not every person needs to be corrected. Next is learning to share your mind effectively. Because here's the truth: being intelligent isn't enough. If no one can understand you, you're just noise to them. So, learn how to communicate for impact, not just accuracy. That means breaking down complex ideas into relatable language, using stories, not just facts, asking questions that invite curiosity instead of delivering answers that trigger defensiveness. Deep thinkers often forget the goal isn't to show how smart you are. The goal is to plant a seed. Let it grow in the other person's mind. Water it with patience, not ego. Sometimes the best way to introduce a new idea isn't to argue for it, but to live it. When people see your calm, your clarity, your joy, they'll start to wonder, what does this person know that I don't? That's when the door opens. And let's be honest, there will be people who never open the door. People who mock you, doubt you, resist you until the end. That's okay. Don't waste your life trying to convince them. Focus instead on the ones who are listening silently, the ones who are on the edge of awakening. Speak to them. Your words may be the spark that ignites their journey. Now let's talk about the gift of solitude. Deep thinkers often feel lonely, not because they lack people, but because they lack connection. But solitude isn't a punishment. It's a sanctuary. It's the space where your ideas crystallize, your vision clears, and your intuition sharpens. Use your solitude well. Read widely. Think freely. Build something. Whether it's writing, art, software, research, or strategy. Create value with your mind. Let your ideas take shape outside of just conversation. Because once they're real, once they exist in the world, people can't ignore them anymore. That's what all the greats did. Einstein didn't spend his life in arguments. He published papers. Socrates didn't shout over crowds. He asked questions that made people think. James Baldwin didn't try to win every debate. He wrote books that still change lives decades later. So the question becomes, what are you building with your mind? Are you hoarding your thoughts in silence, or are you shaping them into something that will last beyond you? And here's one last thought. Don't let the world's rejection make you bitter. That's the trap. You start to believe that being smart means being lonely, that wisdom is a curse, that no one will ever understand you. But that's not true. There are people out there who think like you. They may be rare, they may be hard to find, but they exist. And when you meet them, it feels like coming home. So keep your mind open, but more importantly, keep your heart open. Because real connection for deep thinkers doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from being seen, even by just a few. And trust me, being truly seen, even by one person, is worth more than being liked by thousands. So if you're watching this and you felt unseen, unheard, or misunderstood, just know this. You are not broken. You are not alone. You are not too much. You are exactly what the world needs, just ahead of your time. So don't give up. Don't shrink. Don't change to fit a shallow mold. Instead, go deeper. Grow stronger, and let your mind be the lighthouse for others who are still out there, lost in the fog, looking for something real. That's your role. That's your power. That's your gift. And the world may not say thank you now, but one day it will.